Welcome. As I mentioned, we're planning to have a pretty straightforward session. The objective of today is for you to ask your questions and have them answered. We'll start off with an introduction to the ICOS project for those who don't know it. And then I'll talk a little bit about how you can apply to the open call. And finally, we'll finish off with FAQs. So we'll do that. Another thing I'd like to mention is that Francesco, who is the coordinator of the project, is unable to join us today as he's unwell. So Shabi has offered to present the ICOS project. So thank you very much, Shabi. He's also on holiday, so he's been very kind to be here today. So what I'll do is I will share my screen and we can get started. Let's see, I just have to move the panel. Here we are. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Just get to the beginning. Okay, so feel free to ask your questions at any point. We do have a dedicated session for the questions towards the end of this presentation, but again, I obviously want everyone to feel very comfortable in dropping their questions, so if you need to interrupt me, feel free to do so. But we'll get started with Shabi, who will begin with the presentation. So Shabi, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. First, just apologize for Francesco not coming. I mean, he's sick, crazy, just suffering a strong flu that is just keeping him down. So, apologies for that. He's the project coordinator. I'm the technical coordinator. So somehow I feel obliged to be here, right? So no problem at all. It's a pleasure just to try to share with you what ICOS project is. Okay, so let's start with the project. As you may know, the ICOS project is a project that is now in month say 20 or something like that. The main idea is to try to see how we may design, develop, and validate a meta-operating system for a continuum, right? So we all know what the cloud continuum is. We know that there are many efforts, even in the past, starting in 2016, on developing a sort of management plan for this sort of continuum. We moved that kind of management plan into something that is, say, more intelligent or more, say, agnostic to the technology. And this is what the text in the call referred to as this sort of meta-operating systems. And ICOS is one of the projects that is trying to develop this kind of operating system. The idea behind is that, we all know what the continuum is, so we have a lot of say infrastructure devices, the completely heterogeneous, dynamic, whatever, right? So that should be managed and orchestrated all together. Of course, that most of these or many of these systems have their own native OS, so there is no way that we can create a specific OS that may replace it. The idea is that to create another meta-OS or a meta-OS actually that is the one that is on top of these systems and can manage the different OS that are behind, right? So that's the main conceptual idea for the overall system. The point is how we deploy it, right, and how we design it, right? So the idea, as you see here, the idea is that we should, of course, not starting from scratch. There are many efforts done on that way. So basically, in creating technologies and creating some ideas even that may contribute to that concept. So the idea is to leverage existing platforms. Basically, when we talk about IoT, there are many platforms managing IoT. When we talk about cloud, there are, of course, many systems that are managing cloud. So we cannot be completely blind to these architectures, to these systems. So the idea is to put it all together, leverage on that, and also important to see how we can manage to integrate IoT systems that also far edge devices into the continuum, right? That it's something that is not easy. Here in the picture, you see just an example on how we put together all different systems. That is one of the use cases that we have. Say native in the consortium, right? That is about monitoring railway infrastructure. We'll see a little bit more on that. So Mika, please, if you can go ahead one next slide. So okay, so the objectives I said before, let's just try to summarize before. The objective is this 5. You see that there are 3 that are technical. The first is just to try to design this MetaOS, right? That is the concept that I introduced before. The second one is say, hey, I mean, how we can do that? I mean, we of course should leverage on not on specific technologies that are developed to run cloud, to run Mates, to cloud, to run IoT, but also to see how we should manage the key pillars on the decision-making process that are allocating somehow into this management for the continuum. That are AI, of course, we should be as efficient, as intelligent as possible, and also how we optimize the way the data is processed, right? So these are two two concepts that are very important. But when we talk about data, in ICOS, we see data as a resource, right? So when we talk about the continuum, normally we see the cloud, the edge, far edge, near edge, and also the IoT. So we add in this picture data as also a resource that should be somehow managed. So when we put it all together, we should develop this kind of the intelligent or more efficient structures or architectures to manage the complete set of resources, including data as well, right? And the third one is, of course, we cannot make it all completely agnostic of security and blind to what security is, right? So we should make it all to be trustworthy. But as you may also know, when we add the concept of trust, trustworthiness into the system, sometimes this is adding an extra overhead that is not affordable for many of the systems and devices that are running on the whole infrastructure, right? So we should think on something that is trustworthy, but at the same time that can facilitate this open operation, right? And the fourth is just demonstration in use cases, those that we have in the consortium itself, and also those that are introduced by the first iteration on the open call and also the second one. And then, of course, to create this framework or I mean, umbrella of pushing all together for developing this idea of managing the continuum, right? So that would be the 5 key objectives for the project. So next slide, please. So the challenges, I mean, how we can make it all together to work. I mean, from the point of view of, I mean, from the conceptual perspective, developing this sort of MetaOS is not easy, right? Because there are many things all together that are already managed. So we should see how to put it all and how to be all managed in a seamless way. So the first challenge to be addressed is to enable a device international industry operation iterations continuous process. What does it mean? I mean, we should be able to support devices and systems on the overall stack, horizontal and vertical, that should be managed in a seamless and in a transparent and in an agnostic way, right? Then, of course, when we talk about the continuum by definition per se is not something that is static. It's something, of course, we may think that cloud is static, even that it's not, right? But of course, you may think that cloud is something that we may understand is static. But when we talk about the edge is not static at all. On the other side, the edge is completely dynamic, right? So we should see how we may create and develop functionalities or solutions that be able to allocate on runtime dynamically, even on a predictive mode, how we may create and allocate clusters of resources that may be assigned to service that want to be executed, right? This would be this sort of ad hoc development of the continuum infrastructure, right? And the third is reliability, right? So it's, I mean, how we may create the whole system to be reliable, right? Of course, if we build something that is very, very, very good, but at the end of the day, it's something that is most of the day down, it's completely useless. So we should make it all reliable. And then the concept of sharing, right? How we may share and based on this sharing, create new business models on this area of the cloud continuum, right? So this is the sort of open platform that we put together into ICOS. Next, please. So when we started with the project, I mean, the idea was to go for specific use cases, right? So we tried that use cases that they somehow should be, different, right? The first is that this is, it's not in specific order, right? It's not something that we are prioritizing something here. In car advancement infotainment and multimedia management systems, so the idea is that how we make, from the conceptual perspective, right? How we make, create a scenario that is dynamic because it's in car, that can put together the users on the car, people that is outside the car, sharing functionalities, sharing, multimedia, sharing wherever, right? So this is the scenario. On the right-hand side, you see the picture, the conceptual picture from the point of view of the architectural view, right? So do you have what should be, what should be somehow deployed at cloud, which should be somehow deployed at edge. We are not thinking here on far and near, and also which should be on the IoT, assuming that on the IoT we have this car, understanding that the car is an IoT device, right? That should be also something that we may call it as a for edge, right? So that would be one. We see here that the scenario is quite, say, dynamic, and of course it's introducing mobility because we are managing a car and uses that inside the car and uses that outside the car. Right? The benefits, it's about distribution of services, sharing services, keeping quality of service, but also more important, we talk about multimedia, keeping quality of experience as well, right? Okay, so the next pilot, next slide, please, is on agro, right? So agriculture, as you know, is a very, very, say, traditional landscape where, now is getting more attention from technology providers because there is a big need for distributing new infrastructures, new solutions, right? So the point is that we have one partner that is building this sort of, say, robot, that is the one that you see at the right-hand side of the slide, right? That is this, is a big monster, right? That is putting together many, say, computational and IoT systems. The point is how we may, and this, of course, could be in a rural area that love connectivity. All the, say, worst scenario that we may imagine, right? So the point is how we may somehow manage this robot, how we may benefit from the different functionalities that being brought by this robot, and how we may somehow benefit from that. So the robot that you see here is a big monster. When I say monster, is real. It's not something that it's slow, right? So it's something that is very, very big. So the point is that how we may benefit from, the set of functionalities that are provided here, how this should be distributed on the edge, on the cloud, what kind of functionality should be real time, what should be deployed inside the robots, what should be outsourced into the cloud, right? So that would be the scenario. The point here is that the robot is not cheap, as you may imagine. So we should somehow benefit from the set of functionalities. So it would somehow worth to invest some money in developing this sort of infrastructure in the agriculture sector. So, but we know that the agriculture sector is very, very interesting, and we have a partnership that is the partner that is providing actually there are two partners providing this use case. They are both in Poland, and Poland has been appointed as I don't know what the name is exactly by the Commission, but it's been appointed as the tier one developer in agro sector in the Commission, right? So we have a big player here. So next one is the one that were mentioned before, is on railway structural alert monitoring system. So here the point is very easy. We have a very, 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 very large set of kilometers of tracks that are deployed on wherever, right? So of course these are just moving all day, right? So how do we know that a track is, down or is happening something that is not good, right? So the point is to develop some sort of sensors in the railway, right? So the point is how do we know what is the right spot for distributing or for positioning the sensor on the right track? How do we know the periodicity of the information to be sent? Where is this distributed? Where is this processed? So we have a partner that is developing the sensors, the IoT infrastructure, and also the hubs. You see on the right-hand side that there is an edge device that would be the load balancer. It is the hub that is provided by work sensing. And we also have in the consortium the railway company in Catalonia that is FGC, that are the ones that are providing the tracks, right? So the idea is to be able to monitor in real time if something is happening in rail tracks, and also, of course, to alerting the people that is managing the system, right? Okay, and the next is the energy management, right? So energy, as you also know, is a big player also in everywhere, right? So we have a partner in Ireland that is also distributing energy. That the idea is how we may somehow optimize the way that energy is the flow for energy. I mean, the point is that, of course, we know that we are doing right, but we cannot go for peaks because the energy is going down. There are, time windows where we have an excess of energy that no one is consuming. So we have a problem with energy because energy cannot be stored easily. So the idea here is to optimize just allocating some sensors into homes, into different houses on the clients, how we may optimize the ways that the demand for energy is managed, right? And this is done by somehow controlling the real-time consumption of energy, and also with some smart processes, try to see how we may optimize the distribution on the generation also of energy, right? So this is putting all together the different resources into the continuum. Okay, so these are the 4 use cases, right? The architecture that we have in ICOS is this one. Is say, well, I was about to say easy, or simple, but actually it's not. So the point is that we have, since from the very beginning we thought that would be something complex, we tried to generate a high-level architecture, a conceptual high-level architecture distributing the set of devices that could be, I mean, forget if it's on the edge or in the cloud or whatever, right? So we are distributing software because at the end of MetaOS would be software. So this software piece is distributed or deployed as two suites. One that would be the agent and the other one that would be the controller. It would be the set of functionalities that have to be included in each one of them. The agents is where the workload, I mean, when the tasks are to be executed, and the controllers that in addition to that, in some cases, in addition to that, are those that are managing the agent, right? So it's managing all together. So we have some sort of distributed architecture that is, of course, not centralized. It could be somehow understood as hierarchical, but actually it's not. That assumes that the different nodes that we have in the infrastructure in the continuum are not static, are completely on the move. So wherever that we rely on a node, could be that the node in 5 minutes or in 5 seconds is not there anymore. So we should keep that in mind, right? So we have this sort of fast and immediate and real-time onboarding. We have a very easy policies for, say, offloading traffic to look for different agents where tasks could be executed. So this is all to be managed by the controllers, and that's the overall process. We see how also in the picture here, the lighthouse. The lighthouse is the lighthouse that is somehow letting the controllers know what the topology is, right? Because this is for the process basically on the onboarding. When you start from the very beginning with ICOS, you should know where the content is. We should know where to be connected to, and this the piece of functionalities that are to be allocated into the lighthouse, right? Okay, and next. Okay, next is the use cases. Use cases that we I mean we saw before the use cases we have native into the consortium. These are the 5 use cases that we selected in the first call for the open call, right? On health, smart cities, energy, climate, and space, weather, and occupational safety. This is the first. I mean, it's a different call that this one, right? And then now I think I'm okay. The final one, REST. This is the architecture, right? So when first I show you the conceptual view on the lighthouse, the controller and the agent, but I mean, we just set functionalities. I mean, how we split that into real boxes in the functional architecture, right? So we decided to go for the architecture that you see here. We created the distributed meta kernel layer, but would be the core for the MetaOS, right? And this core is enriched with two pieces. One that is the intelligence, that is the one that is responsible for providing all intelligence, all smartness that this meta-kernel layer needs to optimally perform. And the second one is security. So we cannot be blind to security. So of course we need something that is adding from the very beginning security to the design of the MetaOS, right? You see here some boxes, I mean, inside these three components. I'm not going to go into that. We are of course still working on that. And in addition to that, we have two more, right? One is the data management layer. As I said before, we are not either blind to the data. We are considering data as also a resource. So we have a specific layer that is responsible for managing the data. And of course, we have the shell. I mean, if we are managing an OS, or we try to manage an OS, right? So we are defining the sort of shell that would be the one that is providing the interface for the user, right? Okay, and I think I'm done, right?
Yes, you're done. Thank you very much. I think what I'll do is, if I've understood well, you will need to go soon, Shabi. So we have
I can stay. I can remain in the call, so no problem at all.
up to you, because otherwise I can take technical questions now. We can see if there are any questions anyway. So I'll open the floor for questions on what Shabi just presented. So the architecture, the use cases. If you have any questions on that, feel free to ask them now. If you prefer writing in the chat, you can also ask your questions in the chat, and we'll address them there. So do we have any questions? Okay, I see a couple of, let me take a look. Yes, we have some questions coming in. So the first one is from Ralph. Can we test or download the OS already?
I cannot see the chat, right?
So the chat is in the toolbar. I don't know if you can see the toolbar.
I know, but I cannot open it. I don't know why, but I can.
Okay. Okay. I can read out the questions if
Or
you're
you can
okay with
say it.
that.
I don't know if you can
I
say
can
it.
see it. I can see it, but it's not being shared on my screen. You can't see it on my screen, right?
Okay.
Okay. So I'll read them out. Can we test or download the OS already? Is one question from Ralph.
We can download the first basic, not complete functionality set of some of the ICOS functionalities. I mean, the ICOS project, this is something that I did not mention before. The ICOS project is running in 2 iterations. In month 18, till month 18, the first one, till month 36, the second one. It's a 3 years project. And in the first iteration, we decided to go for a set of functionalities that are those that we show in the review in the past review, right? And in the second iteration, we are extending up these functionalities into the complete set of functionalities that we are envisioning for the overall set of functions in ICOS. But the answer is yes. The right status of the development, I mean, Gabriel is the responsible for the integration, so he may have a more accurate answer for the question, right? But the answer is yes. I mean, of course, we can download it.
Okay, so Ralph, let us know if you've answered your question. We have another question from Berk. For agricultural use cases, a hardware plus software-based solution is okay. So if I'm understanding, Berk, you are looking at developing a solution for the agricultural use case, and you're asking if hardware plus software-based solution is okay, if I've understood well.
I do not get the question. I do not get what the question is, actually.
Okay, okay. Berk, could you elaborate?
I mean, we are trying to look in open call. In the second open call is for services that could be deployed on the different use cases, and there is a slide that is showing that.
Yes, so
different verticals. See, if you can
jump
go
to
probably,
that.
yeah.
Hold on. Yes, so
Okay.
exactly. So basically, hold on, because I'm seeing more questions come in. So basically, as Shabi was mentioning, we have the 4 existing use cases that were already designed within the project, ICOS. And then we selected 5 additional use cases as a result of the first open call. And in this case, in the second open call, we are looking for uptake projects. So we're looking for tech providers to develop solutions or services that will fall within one of these 9 sectors. So in this case, it could be agricultural robotics. Okay, so we're looking for services or solutions that will be tested on the ICOS system. I don't know if that answers your question. If not, Berk, we can also give you the floor.
Yes, Berk, you're unmuted.
There you go. Okay. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. And my question was, our solution was a hardware plus software solution. That a solution works on edge. For agriculture robotics use case, will it be proper to have a hardware plus a software solution in that implementation phase? And I have another question. In the open call documents, there was a reference to open source components. In our use case, there is a hardware and a specific software that is protected with IP, but we can open some of the extensions to open source, make them open source. Will it be proper? I just want to ask these two aspects.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I would say yes. I mean, at the end of the day, what we're going to see is how we may optimize and we may test new services into what we already have deployed into ICOS, right? So if you're providing new services, if you're providing, say, additional services, additional resource, additional hardware, additional systems that may somehow add requirements or require for additional demands into the design of the ICOS platform, that would be good. That would be good for us.
Okay. Thank you, Shabi. Berk, I hope we answered your question. If not, feel free to jump in again. There's no issue. Okay, so if not, then we'll move on to the next question from Julia. Okay, Berk, I see you raised your hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Also, a little bit put some emphasis on the open source components. Is it a mandatory thing in the project call?
So
for a hardware and software based solution, and if there's an IP in place, how should we behave?
do you want to go first, Shabi? Then I'll.
No, feel free. Feel free.
No. What I was going to say is, obviously, I understand that a lot of you may have already developed your own proprietary software and hardware. So the ICOS project is by nature open source, and we really encourage open source because that way, obviously, will spur more innovation. But we understand that maybe not everything can be open source. So what I would recommend is that in the application form, you think of ways of how you can make certain elements of your technology service solution open source, and how that can be beneficial to the wider community, right? Because at the end of the day, we don't want to just fund closed projects, but open projects. So that is my personal opinion. I'll give Shabi the floor.
No, I fully agree. I mean, per se, we are open, right? So this is EU, so it means it's a research innovation action funded by EU, so it's open by definition. But of course, there is some also exploitation. I mean, and intellectual property rights that should be put up there. So, I mean, I would go exactly what she said. I mean, if you can show something open, that would be much easier.
Okay, so if that's a question for anyone else on this call, open source isn't per se mandatory, but we really encourage it. It will give you an advantage in your application. So do explain in the appropriate section how you plan to use any open source components from the ICOS platform, but also in your service or solution. and then also indicate any IP that you need protected. So that way we have a clear, a full understanding of what you're providing in the project. Okay, moving on, we have a question from Julia. So Julia asks, the first open call use cases are considered also in the second open call since they are in the guide for applicants. So I'll mention this again. I'll just change the slide. So here we have a list of 9 use cases. As we mentioned earlier, 4 of them were already defined in the ICOS project and 5 were selected through the first open call. So what we are asking in the second open call is for the applicants, so you, Julia, and the rest of you in this call, to select one of the sectors, one of the 9 sectors. So you'll be developing a solution or service that fits one of these 9 sectors. And then if you need more information on the use cases that fall within these sectors, you will have to visit the guide for applicants, which is on the open call website. And in the guide for applicants in Annex B, if I'm not mistaken, you will see the description of each of these 9 use cases. But the important thing is the sector, right? So we have railway monitoring, agriculture robotics, smart city, structural health monitoring, any one of these 9. So I hope I answered your question. Then I see that we've answered Burke's questions already here. Okay, yes, thank you. Yes, you can raise your hand so that we can give you the floor to speak. Absolutely. Then Gabriele said, sorry, I think you cannot hear me. Concerning, Gabriele, I think you need to raise the hand if you want to speak. Do you want to give it a go?
Okay,
Yes.
now, yes.
Okay.
I was wondering why I didn't
Sorry.
see the microphone icon. Yeah. No, just I explained just to complement with the Xavi answer to the first question. We have published the source code of the first release and also the documentation, technical documentation. However, as we said, this is not yet complete, and actually we are already implementing new functionalities now. So the version that we are using now and that will be used for the second open course is far more advanced than the one that is published. However, you can inspect the code and read some technical documentation also to have an idea of which are the components and the functionalities and how ICOS will work.
Okay. Thank you, Gabriele. Okay, I think we have one more question from Amigo team. Can you please elaborate a bit further? Which climate and space weather outcome is expected? I cannot find proper info in the guide for applicants. So this is a bit of a vague question because I think here what we're trying to say is we're keeping it quite open for you, right? We don't have a specific outcome. Then correct me if I'm wrong, Xabi or Gabriele, a specific outcome we need you to develop. We would like you to propose the outcome, right? So we're giving you the sector, which is climate and space weather. Then you can see the use case, which is an example of what is being done within this sector. But then, of course, we would like you to think of a service or solution that could be beneficial to this sector. Xabi, Gabriele, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, the only point is that the service that we are allocating to each one of these scenarios should be something that is requiring the continuum itself, right? I mean, it should be not something that is only running in cloud, or it should be something that is only running on processing data that is coming from an IoT device. It should be something that would benefit from having this vertical management of the different infrastructure that could be allocated to run the different tasks and functionalities of this service, right? So that's the only constraint. I mean, we need the continuum, right?
Okay, great. Okay, so then if there are no further questions, I'll continue talking about the how
we
to
have
apply.
one more participant, Josef. You can talk now.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and all the clarifications. Just in terms of the actual implementation, say if we go for the fifth sector, structural health monitoring, do we need to provide the full experimentation setup? Say, for example, if we want to, if the proposal is about monitoring of a bridge health, do we need to find, I don't know, local authority that give us access to a bridge where we can test the efficiency of our AI system after implementation? Or it's okay if we get some data around this and we use the data to test it without access to the physical asset or structure? And then the other question, will ICOS help us to find such experimentation setup or access to structures for to test the efficiency of the implemented system? Yeah, and do we need like to set, say, for example, IoT sensors around the bridge, and that will be covered by the cost, or we should find data around this to work with?
Thanks for the question. I mean, it's interesting what you're saying. I mean, look, from our point of view, what you have is ICOS, right? So that is a piece of software. So the use case that you want to use this piece of software is a use case that should provide the infrastructure where this piece of software should be deployed into, right? So it's not something that is emulated. It's something that is, I'm gonna deploy the ICOS suite controller agent into the scenario that is to be built, where ICOS actually is to be demonstrated, right? So going back to your first point of the question is, I would say yes. I mean, you need to provide the whole set of infrastructure that you need to run the service, because at the end of the day, you will download ICOS, install it, and let's see what's happening. Okay?
Okay.
Good. Regarding the second one, is you should provide the whole scenario, right? If I'm not wrong. On your on this, yeah, I mean, the answer is the same. I mean, you need the let me be a little more say ambiguous here. I mean, if what we want at the end of the day, what we want is to demonstrate that ICOS runs on a more extending set of, or a more large set of scenarios, right? So what we need is the scenario that you bring into the consortium, because you are adding a new context. This scenario is defining a set of requirements, probably, and we would need a set of functionalities, and probably we would need to tune some of the blocks just to incorporate these functionalities and whatever you may need. So this means that you should provide the whole set of whatever that you need to run this scenario. It's not that you have data that, I mean, you can download data from a library and you are just, I mean, editing the data, processing data, and see what's happening by editing and adding new functionality to the data. That's not the case.
All right. Okay. So in this case, then, maybe this is not necessarily only suitable for service provider. There should be another partner to provide such access to the infrastructure, right?
I mean, I mean, it depends on how you build the use case, right? I mean, if for your use case, you need the infrastructure that you are not owning, and you need something that we cannot even in the consortium put together for you to test it, then of course that you need to bring also infrastructure provider.
Just a quick addition to what you're saying, Shabi. Just keep in mind that in this open call, only one entity will be selected. So I'm not sure, Hussam, if you're familiar with the first open call, but in the first open call, we were funding 2 entities. Okay, so there was an end user and a tech provider. In this case, it is just a tech provider. What can happen though is when you are filling out your application form and there is the implementation section where you have to talk about your resources, what you can consider doing is subcontracting some of the work out, and then obviously including costs such as infrastructure. Remember, with subcontracting, it can only be about 15% of the total project budget, but you cannot have another partner on board that will be funded through this open call, if I've explained myself clearly.
Yeah, and please correct me if I'm wrong. This should be a common approach by all the applicants, right? Because across the different sectors, from 1 to 9, the tech service provider need to demonstrate the capabilities of the ICOS platform for one of these sectors. So they should have access to real world infrastructure, right? Or does ICOS, for example, provide such infrastructure for some industries that the tech providers can use for their project?
I'll let Shabi answer this one.
Yeah, I mean, for example, let's go to the example on the railway, right? Imagine that you have a service that is running on railway and rail tracks, whatever. So of course, in that case, we may see how we may use infrastructure we're already using with the infrastructure provider and see how you may develop the service. But that would be something that is particular because we already have built the scenario and infrastructure that would be needed. But if we are bringing something that is new, something that is different, something that even that is, say, matching the sector requires infrastructure that we are not, at that time, we have not, we cannot provide in the consortium, then there is no way that we can test something that we do not have unless you are providing in the whole set, the whole landscape, infrastructure, service, all you need.
Mm-hmm. And
so sorry, just a quick follow-up question. Thanks for that clarification. For Sector 5, for example, will you have already, since that was the use case from first call, will you have already, a bridge where, whoever is bringing a new idea or to show a new capability of ICOS on bridge as structure or asset, would you have bridges where we can test our solution on?
so
Honestly, I do not remember now I do not remember now, honestly.
I think what we need to keep in mind here is this. There's two things to keep in mind. One is that we have to be practical because you will be receiving in this second open call 60K, okay, 60,000, up to 60,000.
Yes.
Or the duration of your project, which will last 6 months only. So remember, everything that you're visualizing now, all the time that it may take, etc., that needs to happen within the 6 months. Okay, so there needs to be some element of pre-planning. It has to be very structured so that within those 6 months you can carry out the development of your project with 60,000 maximum. So that's the first thing when you're thinking of how your project, if your project is feasible, right? And then the other thing is that you were mentioning now that rightly so, that from use case 5 to 9, these are the use cases that were developed as a result of the first open call. But again, seeing that it is a 6-month-long program, etc., this is not, we're not, it's unlikely that you will be in touch with the first open call winners who are developing these use cases. You see what I mean? This is why, if I've understood your question well, you're asking if you could have access to what's being developed within these use cases. These use cases right now are still being developed. So basically with the first open call, the projects are being developed as we speak, right? So they are in the early stage of the project execution. So this second open call, the projects will kick off in January. So there may be some overlap, but you should not be too dependent on the outcomes of the first open call.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
Shabi,
you.
I don't know if you have anything else to add. Okay. If you think of any other questions, Susan, you can feel free to ask them to us either today in the FAQ, but also we have a help desk, and I'll show it to you in a minute, where you can drop questions there as well. So we will be able to tackle any doubts you have offline. Okay, in the interest of time, since we only have about 10 minutes, I'm going to quickly whiz through a couple of things that you may already know if you've already started the application process, but I think it would be good to quickly go through them. So I'm going to go backwards a little bit. So the second open call is looking for uptake projects, okay? And so in this case, we're looking for tech service providers who will be receiving up to 60,000 and will be participating in a 6-month-long support program. We're thinking between January to June, with the potential of some leeway for delays if needed. But we do need to conclude the ICOS project by August, so there will be some time for an extension, but little. And we'll be selecting 15 projects this time round. So it is different to the first open call for those who have participated in the first open call. We've already talked about this. We're looking for tech providers. So we're looking for SMEs or mid-caps. And another criteria that is necessary is that you are coming from a member state, a European member state, or one of its overseas countries and territories, or a Horizon Europe associated country. And if you're in doubt of whether you belong to one of these groups, if you check the guide for applicants, you'll see the list. There's a link that takes you to the list, okay, of countries that are eligible for this open call. And as we mentioned, we are keeping the open call quite open for you. So you must develop a product or service in one of the following sectors, okay? So any one of these 9 sectors. Now, another thing that's really important is that you are within scope, okay? And I'll explain why. Because you will be primarily checked for scope before your project moves to the external evaluation stage. And I'll come to that in a minute. So what is the scope of this open call? So we've mentioned this previously, but you basically need to develop a product or service that addresses the uptake of the ICOS platform, okay? So what you are proposing needs to be onboarded on the ICOS system, and you need to test the ICOS functionalities so that the ICOS team can improve the ICOS final product. So that is the end game, okay? Now I'm going to go on more of the administrative side of things. So if you haven't yet created your application, you need to sign in for an account with Funding Box, which is the platform where the application form is hosted. So you basically to sign up for an account, then you just start a new application. It's a very straightforward process. Here is basically a screenshot of what the application sections look like. If any of you have any experience with Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, etc., you will see that there is some overlap with the structure of the application form, notably excellence, impact, and implementation. So pretty straightforward. We have tried to design it to be simple. It's fully online. And you can save your application in draft, so you can come back to it as many times as you like. There's no paperwork. You can also download the application as a PDF, but only once you've submitted. One thing to also remember is that we are allowing for multiple submissions, but the important thing is that the team members are different. So for instance, if I am creating an application, I can create multiple applications as the application creator, but I would have to have different team members because we cannot have duplicate teams, okay? So if you have different ideas, different team members, you can submit more than once. Right, and I think I'm coming to the end of this section, the evaluation. So this is obviously critical for you. There is more detail in the guide for applicants, but essentially we have 4 different evaluation stages. So it does take some time until you receive full confirmation that you have been selected. We will communicate to you twice. We will communicate to you after the in and out scope, and we'll communicate to you after the consensus meeting. So basically, first we check if your application is eligible. So I've already mentioned what makes you eligible, which is that you have to come from member states or associated countries. You have to submit on time. You have to submit in English. You have to submit your application via the Funding Box platform, not via email. All of that is already defined in the Guide for Applicants in Section 3. You also have to complete the Declaration of Honor, which is a section on the application form where you basically agree to the terms and conditions. So once you've passed that stage, there is an in and out scope screening, which is where the selection committee of the ICOS project, so technical partners and Funding Box, come together and we review whether your application is in scope and has a European dimension. As I mentioned, in scope is what we've discussed earlier, that you must address the uptake of the ICOS platform with your product or service. So once we check if you're in scope and your project has a European dimension, we notify you if you have passed to the next stage or not. If you have passed to the next stage, you will then have your application evaluated by 3 external evaluators. So 3 external evaluators who have experience in the field will independently evaluate your application. They will score your application, and then we will have the final scores and communicate to you whether you were above threshold or below threshold. And then, of course, we have to make a final selection, because if we have, I don't know, 50 applications that are above threshold, we will look at the scoring and obviously the top scorers and the projects that are most relevant to the ICOS project, and that will guarantee the best successful outcome for the ICOS project will be selected. So you will be notified of that. And then the final step is, once you have been selected, you will need to sign what we call the sub-grant agreement, which is basically a contract between yourselves and the consortium detailing the details of your participation in the project. The sub-grant agreement, the draft, is already available on the Open Call website. So if you want to take a look at the terms and conditions from today, you can. Okay, so that is everything on the side of how to apply. I assume most of you have already started your applications on the portal. If not, as I mentioned, it's very straightforward. We also have the dedicated ICOS website where there's information there, and that complements the Open Call website where the Open Call information is provided. And we also have an Open Call help desk. Okay, so this is hosted on Discord, and there you can drop your comments and questions, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. So that's it from my side. I don't know if you have any additional questions. We've got 5 minutes, 4 minutes, more or less. I don't have access. No, yes, I have access to the chat. There is one question from Gertz. What happens after 6 months? What is the assessment of the project and the final parameters? So after 6 months, your participation in the project would be concluded. You are going to be paid a lump sum, which means that you will need to provide us information confirming that you have delivered as you said you would deliver. And once you provide proof that you have done the job, we will transfer the money to you in different stages, not all at once. So you have different tranches. And at the end of the participation of your project, there will be no further engagement with you unless we can think of a way to share our findings. And then that's it, really. I mean, we then carry forward with other projects and see if they can be of interest to you, so that you can continue to fund your existing ideas or new ideas, etc. I'm not sure if I've answered your question, Gertz. Yes, okay. Shabi, Gabriele, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Not from my side. Just thank to people that is attending for interest.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope the session was useful. I hope you managed to get answers to your questions. And please do use the help desk so that we can answer you in more detail. And that's it.